Classrooms are closed for the rest of the school year. So how will hundreds of thousands of students keep learning from a distance? And the ethics behind medical decision-making in a pandemic. Today is Sunday, April 5th, 2020, and this is Flashpoint. Hi, welcome to Flashpoint. This is Sunday morning. I only point it out because it might be a helpful reminder. Our days are running together in a Groundhog's Day kind of way, and looking forward to the weekend or the work week or your Tuesday night bowling league or your Thursday lunch spot aren't really there to act as runway lights right now. And we learned this past week that the school calendar, long the Greenwich Mean Time for families, has been canceled for the remainder of the school year. It wasn't exactly a surprise when the governor made that announcement on Thursday, but it was a reality check. The kids at home, the efforts at homeschooling, those continue. Graduations, proms, college testing for juniors, those are kaput for now. Coming up this morning, a conversation with 3 school system superintendents. Can we get Michigan parents and students on the same page, or is it chaos theory from now till the start of the next school year? Also this morning, some questions I've been wanting to dig into since the crisis made it clear that tough choices were going to have to be made. Are we making the ethical choices? And no, that ethical may not be synonymous with pleasant or easy. For example, you've got 1 ventilator and 3 people needing it. Who gets it? We'll tackle that and more today on Flashpoint. Well, the news of the week that landed with the most impact on many families was, of course, the governor's announcement that the remainder of the school year was canceled. She left it up to the districts to find their way through these next few months that take us into a new and no doubt very complicated school year. Let's talk about that with 3 area superintendents. Dr. Nikolai Vitti from the Detroit Public Schools Community District, you see on the upper right. Dr. Steve Matthews from Novi Community Schools on the upper left. And at the bottom of the screen, Dr. Robert Livernoy from the Warren Consolidated School District. I've known Bob for a long time because we both are just working at our day job until music works out. Bob, good to have you here this morning. I'm going to assume that none of you are taking issue with the governor's decision. I hope you'll correct me on that. But the decision to put it all in the district's hands rather than a cohesive statewide plan, was that solid thinking, or is that just kind of handing a porcupine to each of you? Dr. Vitti, let me start with you.
No, I actually understand what the governor was trying to do. She does understand that there are degrees of resources across school districts. Districts were in different places regarding their resources, capacity to move to online learning, as far as requiring credits to be issued and grades to be issued. So overall, I think the governor is once again in a difficult situation and did the best she could considering this crisis. So I don't find any fault regarding her decision or at a high level, the directions that she gave to districts to continue with learning, but doing it online.
Dr. Matthews, your thoughts on that same question?
I would agree with Dr. V. I do think that each district has a capacity, and it was best to allow each district to play to their strengths and to identify the ways that they could continue to support students. There's a wide variety of differences between school districts in Michigan, rural and suburban, and big district, little district, districts that have technology, districts that struggle with technology, families that have access at home, families that don't have access at home. And so to have a blanket statewide system would have been very difficult to implement. I think it was best to leave it in the district's hands to identify how they could best serve their communities.
And can I assume we've got unanimous consent on that then, Dr. Livernoy?
Yeah, I'd like to add too, sort of encompassing both of Dr. Matthews and Dr. Vitti. This is a refreshing time for us because we have a governor who really and truly understands the value of local control. As was mentioned, no one knows their communities better than boards of education and the teachers serving children. And for a long time, we haven't had that. So although it might be perceived as putting so much on them, definitely the right thing to do.
Dr. Vitti, we talk a lot about the digital divide in the state, and usually when we're talking about that, I think we're talking about district to district. But each of you have your own digital divides within your district. You've got students who have better access to computer help. You've got better broadband. I'm curious as to how each of you are going to try to address this, and just how much learning do you expect your students to carry out and to accomplish in these couple of months that are left in what would have been the school year. Dr. Vitti, you first.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think we see the reality of the digital divide, which is really based on a socioeconomic divide. So whether we're talking students in individual districts that are rural, suburban, or urban, you see the difference regarding what a family has access to regarding a device and internet access. I think what's interesting in Detroit is a lot of our parents actually have a device, whether that's an iPhone or an Android. They even have internet access or data plans. The reality is the data plans are not large enough to sustain ongoing learning. So, you know, I think we have to be careful with blatant statements that just because you're in a suburban district, everyone has access to the internet or a computer device. What we're going to do is build off the curriculum that we have been using from the pre-K 12th grade level in reading, math, science, and social studies. We're going to then pick materials, place them online, videotape the introduction of the lesson or the assignment or the content linked to the assignment. Parents, students can submit those assignments online through email, through cloud functions. But what we're going to do in Detroit is print the materials for packets and then distribute it out to parents. So if there is a digital divide reality, then at least they have access to the packets, and then we'll use phone calls to engage with students that don't have immediate internet access. And then lastly, long-term as far as the next couple of months are concerned, we're working on a plan to possibly fund a tablet for every DPSCD family, along with internet access for the next 6 months. And the business community is starting to step up to help us problem solve through those realities. But that's why enrichment is important in all of this. And to answer your last question, I think the majority of our students will participate in these lessons and activities. But again, based on their reality out of the home, are people sick? Are they working multiple jobs? How familiar and comfortable are they with the academics? All those factors are going to play into the scale of participation.
Dr. Matthews, what's your expectation level? What are you telling your students? What do you want them to accomplish?
Well, I think the main thing we want them to accomplish is to continue to engage with our curriculum. We have our curriculum online, and so parents have access to the direction that we're headed. What our teachers are going to provide and have provided is our lessons that will deepen the learning that they've already engaged in. And now we're moving to stage 2, where they're going to be teaching new content. And so the hope would be that our students will engage in that content and keep their minds fresh and deepen their skills and continue to learn. It is tricky. Parents are home now, so many parents are working from home. And so they may be using the devices that their family used to share. And if you have multiple children at home, there's no guarantee that you have multiple devices that every child could get on when they wanted to. And so it's going to be kind of a learning experience for both our families and for the district as we engage in this kind of digital learning as we move forward.
Yeah, Bob, trying to get, Dr. Livernoy, trying to get all of this technology into the right hands is critical, because there is a huge difference if you're at home trying to do this on either a tablet, a laptop, or a desktop versus trying to look at a phone.
And as an extension of that, what are we asking them to do with technology at home that actually helps promote constructing new information? As we all know well, it's one thing to get on a phone or a computer, surf around and find things, but to construct that into a product is a significant challenge. And one other thing I'd like to mention, Dr. Matthews pointed out the idea of both mom and dad might be home working from home. And in my case, if I had my 3 daughters when they were in high school, each with 6 teachers, there's potentially 18 contacts in a house along with mom and dad who might be vying for the same technology. So it's critical that we keep a perspective on what is possible and focus on helping kids try as best as possible to construct new learning along the way. But make no mistake, this is new ground for all of us. And I can say, I'll speak for my district. We are up for the challenge, but it's going to take some time.
It's going to take, no doubt there will be some fits and starts as we go. Dr. Vitti, though, it's interesting, you're talking about local control and leaving it to the districts. There's also local control in each district because each teacher, it seems, has his or her own system. And I've heard from a lot of parents who are kind of frazzled at trying to figure out each teacher's demands, each teacher's own point of contact, instead of sort of us having a more cohesive one-size-fits-all approach.
Yeah, and to that point, you know, when we think about Detroit, you know, we can't think about our students in a monolithic way. We have some parents that are emailing me saying they want more, that they don't feel like they're getting enough academic rigor, enough materials, enough assignments. But then on the other extreme, I have parents that are saying, I can't focus about academics right now. I need food. And I mean, I'm just giving you two extremes, but that's what we're dealing with. And I think every one of us to some degree are dealing with these same huge differences regarding need out in the community through this crisis. So I think the importance here is that districts are going to provide academic materials, academic engagement. I think our teachers are ready to be more activated, if you will, knowing we're not returning to school. They're going to be more available through phone calls. We're going to use a product called Teams, which is equivalent to Zoom through Microsoft, a Microsoft product. So we're going to see more telecommuting, more teleconferencing. But I think we all have to have perspective here. That this is a new way of work. We have families that are, some that are just trying to survive. We have employees that are going through great hardships right now within their own family. So everyone needs to breathe. We need to try to do as much as we can academically so our students' brains are still activated and being used. But we all have to realize this is unprecedented, and we're all going to do the best we can to ensure learning continues, and hopefully we can be back in schools by the fall.
Dr. Matthews, under the best of circumstances, you know that you've got, within your district, you've got kids who have very engaged, involved parents at home, and you've got kids who don't have that kind of support. The fact that we have a place to go where they spend their 8 hours a day, 6 hours a day, however it works out, whatever the limit is these days, with teachers smooths that out. Now you take that away. I'm wondering how radically different the experience is going to be and what the disparity is going to be when the kids come back for the next school year.
That's a significant concern. Our teachers do a tremendous job of, as you suggested, smoothing out the rough edges of our students' experience. They bring with them their family, with their community experience, and those vary widely. We have students who are very involved, who are there before school starts. They're there way after school ends because they're in clubs and activities and sports, and all of those extra things have been taken away. As you mentioned at the beginning, school is kind of a way to organize life for a lot of families. Yeah. And so those relationships that are built at school are very meaningful and important. And now we're asking our teachers to try to develop those relationships via conference calls and video conferences and over the phone, and it's a different experience. And so our teachers are, as Dr. Livernoy suggested, up for the challenge, but it is a different experience because one of the most important pieces of any educational experience are the relationships that our students develop with the teachers and the adults in the building. And that is lost right now, and we're trying to find our way to continue to be able to develop those relationships.
Lastly, Dr. Livernoy, I saw a really interesting question on the frequently asked questions that you've been getting. This seems so small in the scheme of things, but it's one that every parent is trying to figure out. What do we do about getting my kid's stuff that has been at school all this time?
I'll tell you, that along with so many other issues are affected by the stay-in-place order. And when I think about how serious it is that we stay in place, whether students get their stuff back now or later, really seems small given what we're dealing with in this pandemic. But and it reminds me, Dr. Matthews said, through all of this, one group that has really hit home for me is our seniors.
Yes.
You think about high school is really the universal human experience for a lot of people, and our seniors have had that taken away.
Yeah.
And I think about prom and commencements and all the things that go into senior year, and to have that just summarily taken away, that's a significant loss.
Yeah, it sure is. We all think about what happened during our senior year, no doubt about it. Gentlemen, thank you all very, very much for the time and the very thoughtful responses that went into this, and best of luck as we push ahead. When we come back, the thorny ethical issues that we're facing in a pandemic. This is Flashpoint I'm looking for.
With Michigan weather being so unpredictable, spend tax returns and profit-sharing checks where it matters most, your home. Call Ace & Sons today.
Don't go to the wrong place. Leave your insulation to Ace.
Spring has sprung at Joe's Produce Gourmet Market. This Easter is a great time to put all your eggs in one basket. Joe's Produce Gourmet Market has it all for this holiday celebration. Hot, juicy prime rib roast, so tender you can cut it with a fork. Assorted delicious desserts, freshly made bread, lilies, tulips, and daisies. Joe's Produce Gourmet Market in Livonia wishes you a happy Easter.
Life is what you make it at Joe's.
From the moment you wake up
To the moment your day ends, local news has never been more important.
That's why Detroit stations came together to bring you the governor's town hall.
Throughout this crisis, Local 4 News and Click on Detroit have kept you informed with constant updates from our own Dr. Frank McGeorge, briefings from our mayor and medical experts, and some good news too.
We'll keep on giving you what you need so we can all weather this storm together.
Stay with Local 4 News and Click on Detroit for the moments that matter. The pandemic is providing us with some very difficult ethical medical decisions, and thorny ethical matters are the tangled underbrush that has always thrived in the Flashpoint garden. So let's dig into the tough questions with two medical ethicists, Dr. Susan Gould, professor of internal medicine at the University of Michigan, and Dr. Michael Stellini, clinical professor of medicine at Wayne State University. Thank you both. I really appreciate your time this morning. Dr. Gould, let me start with you. When we arrive at what eventually is going to become for some cities a rationed care situation, what are the calculations? What's your starting point when you try to decide what's ethically right?
Well, first of all, I think everyone should know that this has been planned for and thought about long before it happened. So there are, 10 years ago or so, working on plans in case of a pandemic that led to the need to decide how to use scarce resources. So the planning has gone on, and a lot of thoughtful people, not just ethics people, but also medical, clinical, and epidemiologic folks have considered, okay, what if this happens? What if that happens? And what sorts of considerations come into play?
So
there's also been some
we've kind of already got our medical will in place, and now it's a matter of following those directives. Dr. Stellini, but does the fog of war, if you will, does that change the ability to carry out what maybe you've already decided you should do?
Well, as Dr. Gould said, many places, including the state of Michigan, have come up with guidelines for allocation of scarce resources in the event of public health emergencies. And hospitals across the region have been looking at this and have been actually making plans on how to implement it if we have to. The first obligation we have is to prevent the need to do this by planning. And that's that whole idea of flattening the curve. That's why the governor is having us stay at home, the social distancing. So if push comes to shove and we really do run out of resources, there are plans that people and guidelines that people have to make some hard decisions if they have to. We're not certain that we're going to get there, and I don't think anybody has really gotten to the point of having, for example, 0 ventilators available. We hope we never get there, but if that really happens, those things are in place to guide us.
Dr. Gould, a question that I asked of the state's top medical director the other night in the town hall meeting. There are clearly going to be, there's going to be a need to transfer some COVID patients to hospitals that are maybe a little ways away from these epicenters of where these have been such dense problems. And I can understand a community saying, I really don't want that visited on us. I don't know if that's happening maybe at an administrative level within the hospital, but how ethical is it to demand that other hospitals pitch in?
Well, first of all, I think that what I've seen anyway, and I'm not the medical director of the state of Michigan, but, is that they are trying to develop, for instance, alternative sites near the current hospitals that are facing the biggest demand on their space and on their personnel. And remember, it's not just ventilators, it's the people who know how to use them and to take care of the patients who are on them. So, so that's one thing, is that I think a lot of the overflow, if you will, may happen locally rather than, say, sending a bunch of people up to Traverse City or something, or Cadillac, okay? I can certainly understand not wanting to be on the receiving end of a lot of COVID patients. However, we also know that the virus is in most places in Michigan now, and if there are diagnosed cases, there's undoubtedly undiagnosed cases in those same communities.
Right.
So nobody's really going to be avoiding this.
Dr. Stellini, we've also heard that there is sort of a priority placed on a patient that is younger, that would seem to have more life ahead of them. But I can also see a family saying, look, rather you're going to take this care away from my 65-year-old mother and give it to a 25-year-old guy, when he's the one who went on spring break and put himself in harm's way when my mother was doing everything she could to try to avoid the virus. Do we ever get to those kinds of thorny issues? Or is that just sort of headspace in medical ethics school?
So age is something that's tricky, obviously, and we really try to avoid using age as a criteria for rationing. Now, most of the time, the older person has more what we call comorbidities, other illnesses, and that's a more rational way of looking at prognosis. So if somebody has multiple medical problems and then gets COVID, you know, we can look at what their chance of actually recovering is if they get very sick, if they need a ventilator, or if they've been on the ventilator and not doing well. Maybe that's somebody who switches, they lose a ventilator, and somebody who's younger and healthier gets it.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to dance around it, but we really try and stay away from age. But usually age comes along with other comorbidities as a way to prognosticate and prioritize.
Oh, okay. Because that is sort of the classic one that we hear. The other one that is very top of mind right now, Dr. Gould, is medical trials and sort of using off-brand or off-label treatments. We keep talking about this with chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine, and whether or not people should just have access to it and the right to try. But what's the right ethical approach to these untested medicines?
So I think that in the case of untested medicines, we need, in order to find out if they work, we need to test them. So right to try, which is relatively new legislation, was really to be able to be enrolled in a clinical trial. In other words, you could try something, but your data would then be used to inform whether or not the drug or whatever treatment it is worked. So I think we have to be careful about this. First of all, there is no such thing as a perfectly safe drug. Hydroxychloroquine is used for lots of things, but it also can have bad effects. We need to know if those are worth it and if it even works against COVID. There's lots of questions right now amongst clinicians as to whether it works at all.
Dr. Stellini, I got about 30 seconds left. Is there another particularly thorny issue you see us needing to deal with?
No, I just think that people ought to think about this flattening the curve, social isolation so we don't have to get into these thorny situations. That is really the most important message to get out. We have contingencies that we hope we never have to get to.
Boy, so right. Go ahead, Dr. Gould, really quickly.
I just want to punch in and say, and help each other and don't blame people for getting sick.
That is truly the ethical approach. Thank you both. I really appreciate you being with me this morning. We'll take a quick break and wrap things up right after this.
With Michigan weather being so unpredictable, spend tax returns and profit-sharing checks where it matters most, your home. Call Ace & Sons today.
Don't go to the wrong place. Leave your insulation to Ace.
These are difficult times. The Detroit Wayne Integrated Health Network is here with hundreds of trained clinicians offering face-to-face help to you through this crisis. Consider downloading the My Strength app, an interactive support tool offering daily encouragement. My Strength will help you with your mental well-being. You are not alone. The Detroit Wayne Integrated Health Network is here to talk, here to help. 800-241-4949.
Taking care of yourself and your family has never been more important.
Michigan families matter to us, which is why we will always put you first.
The CDC recommends making time to unwind and get plenty of sleep. Gardner White can help. Store closings left major mattress factories with truckloads of mattresses. We bought it all for pennies on the dollar, and now so can you. This quality Queen Serta Perfect Sleeper sold for $8.99. Now just $3.99.
Only at Gardner White, Michigan's hometown team.
A quick note about our last segment, which we had taped earlier, and after we spoke with Dr. Gould, she followed up with a clarification about the right to try legislation we discussed. She notes that in a situation like the one our nation is in now, there is an ethical need to ensure that we learn from using experimental treatments in patients with COVID-19, so enrolling patients in clinical trials would be ethically preferable to using the right to try law to gain access to a new treatment outside of a clinical trial. Hope that clears it up. Quick reminder, if you did not see this past week's town hall meeting with Governor Whitmer, I advise you to check out that hour of television, and we've got it for you at clickondetroit.com. Thanks so much for being here for this edition of Flashpoint. Meet the Press coming your way next week. Have a very good and very safe week, and we'll see you next Sunday for Flashpoint.